Hello, friends. This is Adrian Sinclair with Apodcast with interesting people. And my guest today is Sarah Cantero, the author of Wildest Moon book that we're going to talk about a little bit, but primarily we're going to be talking about meditation. So I'm excited to have her today on the show. Welcome, Sarah. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Adrian?
So I'm excited because we chatted a little bit before, and you have such a vast experience with meditation, and a very specific one that we're going to be talking about today. And meditation is such a different thing to different people, and there's different kinds, and there's different ways about meditating. And I wanted to talk to someone who's been very experienced with meditation, and with the one specific one that you've been engaged in. You've done it for so long that I'm very impressed by what you've done, and just talking about it makes me kind of unveil a little bit more in that space. So I want to get educated. I want to learn a little bit from you about your journey into meditation, and this specific meditation, which is Vipassana. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay.
No, that's perfect. Vipassana meditation. Yeah.
Vipassana meditation.
I want to thank you for that intro, but I have met so many meditators since being in Vipassana, and most of them would call me kind of like a baby in the Vipassana field. So even though I've been to, 5-10-day silent courses, I've met people who've gone to 60-day courses and who've been to, I don't know, maybe 30 10-day courses. So I hope that I still give you a lot of really good information.
Well, look, let me tell you this much. As someone who can meditate for 2 hours a day or 7 hours a day, you mentioned to me how long you've been meditating while in those retreats. That to me is, it's almost unbelievable, because, I can barely meditate for maybe half an hour, maybe, I think the longest maybe, but I'm not even sure if I can even call that meditation. So doing it for even longer than that, I mean, it requires definitely a mastery, and I want to learn more about your journey. And so to me, you are way, way up high on the meditation scale, and I am a little baby. So take me through, how did you get into Vipassana meditation? What is it? Where did it originate? Why is it good to do? Why is it not good to do? What are your thoughts on it? How long you've been doing it? When? And all that jazz. So tell me more about that meditation.
Wow. So I came across Vipassana. I was about, I believe it's been 2 years now. I was meditating in my room, just trying to focus. And I actually started reading some meditation books. And I was living in this house in Great Falls, Virginia, and it had all windows around it, and it was in the woods. So I would just sit there and I would stare out at the woods with my eyes open and meditate. And I was pretty depressed at the time. I had just gotten out of school, and I was a history major, and there weren't really many jobs for history majors.
Right.
It was just hard for me to find a job, and I went back to bartending, which is what got me through college. And I was living out of my car in the summer. Luckily, my brother got a house, and I was able to pay him rent and live with him. And I knew I was just searching for something to get me out of this, because I had learned about the history of all of the world, and all of these crazy things that happened. And there was absolutely nothing that I could do about it. And so I started to just say, well, if I can't do anything about the world, there must be something I can do about myself. And I think that's a really important lesson for all of us to learn, because there are so many crazy things going on, especially right now with COVID-19 and us being stuck inside. And we all really need to sort of realize that, well, there's so many crazy things going on in the world. The only thing that we can really do is try to better ourselves. So I found Vipassana. I was talking to a friend. He had just barely mentioned it. And I was like, what is that? and he wouldn't tell me what it was. And so I just started searching online, free silent meditation. It took me, I think, like 2 months to find it. And then I found it, and I signed up for, I think, 3 different locations, right? It's kind of difficult to get into because it's free, number one, and there are only a limited amount of courses around America, and a limited amount of people that can attend each course. And so when I found it, they at first told me that I couldn't get in because I said that I had some problems with depression, and they wanted, to have some of these, some paperwork from my doctors, but I didn't have health insurance. So I was just like, I don't have any paperwork, but I can sign this consent form that I'm totally fine. I'm ready to take this. I actually wrote them a poem and about how I like backpacked the Alps, and I was like, I could do anything. So they let me in. I got into a course in Menominee, Wisconsin. And it was actually at this mansion from President Lincoln's time. And so it was built in the late 1800s. And it was really cool. I get there, and there are, 60 other people. There are 30 women and 30 men. And right off the bat, the women and men are pretty separated, and we're separated while meditating, and we're separated, into different sleeping quarters as well. And so I just had no idea what I was getting into. I was like you, I had only meditated max 20 minutes. Like, the idea was totally frightening, but I just knew that I had to do it. And I was like, what is 10 days, So I did it, and you pretty much have to take some precepts as you get in. And there's like this Indian guy, S.N. Goenka, who's chanting, and you're like, this is kind of weird. Like, who is this old guy chanting? And so you take these precepts that you won't lie, you won't steal, you won't commit sexual misconduct, and then you will abstain from eating after 5 p.m. There's like a small snack with some fruit and tea. And then as you go on to more courses, you don't get that anymore in the afternoon. You abstain from eating after 12. But yeah, and then you have to maintain noble silence, right? Because this is a totally silent meditation course. And luckily, I got a seat in the back, and so I was able to lean up against a wall. But you're pretty much like sitting on your cushion the whole time, very straight. And the schedule is really, really intense. I think I might have tried to look it up, but it's pretty much you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you chant. You listen to some chanting, and it's all in Sanskrit. And you sit and you meditate until 6:30, and then you have breakfast, and you have a small break, and then you start meditating again at 8 until 11, and then you have lunch break, and then they give you a nice break until about 1 p.m., and then you start meditating again until 5 p.m. when you have a 1-hour break, and then from 6 to 9 you meditate. And then you go back to bed. So you're meditating for about 10 hours a day. And they are pretty like lenient if you feel like you can't meditate and you need to like lay down or something. Nobody's going to come after you unless you're in a group sit. And there are 3 group sits every day. So you have to be there for those 3 group sits. And then for the evening discourse, which talks about what you're practicing and the process, and kind of answers any questions that you have. And there are also teachers that are there that you can talk to. So it's not completely silent. If you feel like you need to meet with a teacher or you're questioning the practice in any way, then you can go and meet with the teacher.
Right.
And they're pretty, yeah.
So question for you, before you start with the routine, do they tell you how to meditate? Because one of the biggest things that that you typically encounter when you're trying to meditate, is that your mind is like a little rabbit. It just wants to hop all over the place. Like, hey, this is interesting. I'm going to go over here. It's just all over, right? And so there's different meditations that, focus you on the breath, or focus you on, maybe sensations in your body, or they focus on maybe counting. Some people count, and if a thought comes in, that you got to kind of reset your counting. So like you go like 1 and 2 and 3, and then if something comes back, you're like, okay, got to restart 1, and so different kind of approaches. There's mantra based meditations where you just repeat a some kind of a phrase or sacred, whatever something sacred to you, and you just kind of repeat that. Transcendental meditation, just so many different ways. So I'm curious if they told you, like they instructed you or helped you with developing some kind of, or just following maybe some kind of specific practice, so that when you do sit for hour, 2, 3, 4, whatever a day, you have something to follow. So if you can share with me, like how did he go about it? Yeah, tell us more about it.
Yeah. So when you first sit down after you take the precepts, S.N. Goenka, who's the main teacher, who actually brought the practice from India to the West in the 90s, he is over the speaker, and he passed away. So this is all recordings that were made in the 90s, and the quality is pretty good. So he teaches you to focus on the natural and the normal breath, right? So he says, focus on the breath, the natural breath, the normal breath, as it feels on your upper lip. Maybe it feels cold, maybe it feels warm, maybe it goes in one nostril and out the other nostril. Just focus your entire attention on the breath. If your mind wanders, then he says, don't worry about your mind wandering. Don't get upset. We have these monkey minds. We have these minds that are going to wander back and forth. And people think, how hard can it be to just focus on the breath, this thing that I do day in and day out, this thing that actually like keeps me alive. And
right.
Yet we find that it's very hard to focus on the breath because our mind wanders like every 10 seconds. And so he's really kind about it. And he's like, even if your mind wanders every 10 seconds, just come back to the breath, come back to the natural and the normal breath. But it's not about pranayama. It's not about, using any sorts of like 1, 2, 3. It's just about focusing on the natural breath and observing your mind. And you do this for 3 days. You just observe the breath for 3 days. And then afterwards, after you've sharpened your area of awareness just to the upper lip, you go and you move through the areas of awareness across your entire body, and you begin to feel sensations everywhere. So you can even, some people on their first retreat even feel sensations, inside their body, inside and out of their body. But it's also a meditation practice that's really focused on, what you experience is what you experience. So you could experience something totally different than the person sitting next to you. But it's just your experience. And that is your reality as it is. And by focusing the awareness on the breath, you are able to be so in tune with the present moment that you realize whatever reality is for you is your reality. So maybe you experience something crazy. Like I've experienced some really crazy things at Vipassana. And
such as what?
Such as just like feeling totally dispersed, like I'm not solid at all. Just like I'm a complete one with the universe. You know what I mean? With every molecule in the entire room, I don't even feel solid anymore.
Has that happened during that first retreat that you did, or was that, and after what time?
It happened to me after the first retreat. It doesn't happen for everyone after the first retreat. They try to keep Vipassana away from organized religions, but for me, I really do believe in past lives. And I found this belief by focusing on my molecules changing. I really came to this knowing from a physical standpoint. And so I do think that some people practice Vipassana in a past life. and they come to it, and they're able to really stick with it. Because I would say that after leaving my first 10-day course, I noticed that only about 3 to 5% of the students that come, which, it's either 60 to 100 students, continue with the practice, because it's very difficult. And I think it's really hard for people to focus on their thoughts, because we don't always like our thoughts, and our thoughts aren't always very kind to us. But if you can get past that, and if you can focus on the sensations in your body, then you can look at it as if you're a scientist, right? I can start to observe what's going on in the framework of my body, and allow this pain to arise and pass away. Because while I'm meditating, pain does arise and pass away, and you remain equanimous, and you don't react, you don't crave, and you don't react. You don't. And if I have like a feeling of good sensation, I have to not crave that sensation either. I just have to remain calm if something's going wrong, and I have to remain calm if something's going right. So it's a very, very tough, it's like balancing on the tiniest little string, to be able to reach that level of awareness. And when the pain does arise and pass away, you feel so light. You just feel like a big weight has been lifted off of you. And it really starts to go into like this whole entire quantum world, of like, wow, I can heal myself from something that may have manifested as a disease on my body later on in life. And so it's really awesome. And, you may be moving these we call them sankharas, when a pain arises and passes away. So
is it physical pain, or is it emotional pain, or psychological pain, or all of them? When that pain arises, physical pain. Okay. So like literally something that you feel in your body. Okay.
Intense physical pain. I was just meditating before this, right? Because I still meditate 2 hours a day. I've kept up with my practice, and
that is amazing.
And thanks. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't know how you carve out the time. Maybe I'm just saying that because I'm a parent, so my life is distributed among different tasks and chores that I have to do around our family. But even like just 2 hours of I try to meditate regularly, especially in the morning. I try to do 20 minutes where I just sit down, and through like various breathing techniques and just kind of recentering. I don't have like a very specific approach to meditation. I do lean back on some mantras that when thoughts come in, I kind of repeat mantras to kind of get me recentered. And but 2 hours a day, I'm not sure how I could do that. Not only even for like carving out time, but carving time for this, but just kind of like doing it for 2 hours. So what happens? So tell me, like when you meditate right now, what happens? How do you get into it? How can people do this for like 2 hours without driving themselves mad? Because like I feel like there's just so many thoughts coming into your mind. Like, my gosh, the brain or your mind is like, oh, you should be doing this. You're wasting your time. You should be like, you have so many things to do today, and it's just like this torrent of thoughts, right? That you're trying to kind of like, well, slow down, we'll get there, right? And so how do you go about it? So it's really tough. I've taken in pretty much 2 hours out of my sleep. This practice really gives me rest. So I feel totally rested after I just feel like I have so much energy after I've practiced, right? So when I wake up in the morning, at first I'm like really tired when I sit to meditate. And so I keep focusing on the breath. And then the breath kind of calms down my thoughts. I'm in this thought process of, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Exactly like you're saying, I've got to get ready for work. I've got to do all of these things. But then all of a sudden, as I focus on the breath, all of a sudden my mind just calms down, and it's completely silent, and my body fires up with sensation.
Does that happen? When that calming? Because I've experienced that too. I think your mind is kind of like trying to rattle off all these different things that you kind of are processing, and then once it kind of runs out of that, unless it's compulsive and wants to do it again and again, then I do experience sometimes this kind of calming place where just kind of like it just gives up. It says like, well, I guess you just don't want to listen to me or something like that. And how often? I mean, does that happen to you after like specific like? Does it take like 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever? Like, can you get into it faster? Has it improved over time as you're doing these 2-hour meditations every day in terms of getting to that place where your mind just quiets down? Did you find it that it's kind of consistently going at the same time, or is it just random and you can never predict it? Or how does that, how quickly can you get into that quiet zone, so to speak?
So it took me a little while. I would say like when I first started meditating, like I just decided to take a strong determination. Like it's called aditan. We call it aditan, strong determination. So I said like, no matter what, I'm going to meditate. So when I first started, I was literally like, this is terrible. And sometimes I would fall asleep and then I'd wake up to this chanting. Other times I would just be on the floor, like, lying down, trying to focus on my sensations and like forget about my mind. And like, and it was so tough. And like, sometimes there were other times when I would meditate and I'd open my eyes and check the clock, and then
been there. I've done that.
Yeah. Yeah. You just keep looking, and it's like, it doesn't change. It's only been 30 seconds. So I would say that after I took that strong determination and I actually kept it for 4 months straight. It took me 4 months of constant morning and night practice, even though some of my practices were questionable. Like after
having Netflix in the background doesn't count.
Yeah. No. So after 4 months, I really got into it, and I think it was more of a thing for me where once I learned how to clear out my mind, I felt like it was like brushing my teeth, right? Like if I didn't sit down to meditate twice a day, it was like my teeth were dirty, and like my mind like couldn't focus on anything, because now I knew like, oh wait, you can do this task with a completely clear mind. And when you do a task with a completely clear mind, it just kind of is easy. And then all of a sudden you start to progress at this insane rate, right? So like when I first started Vipassana, I was just bartending and I was a history major. And today which is 2 years later, I'm an SEO strategist as well as a web developer. And that's insane to be able to do that. I mean, I ended up doing it in a matter of 8 months. And that's unheard of. And I completely think that it is because of my ability to focus now that I have this awesome practice in my life, and to clear my mind, because,
right.
There are situations that really piss me off and like, get to me. And I have been noticing with like, even just with my day-to-day situations, like something that may have pissed me off that someone did, or maybe at work, or maybe with a friend or whatever, before I would be mad for maybe like 2 days. And then once I started practicing, I was mad for a day. And then it starts getting lower and lower, 4 hours, 1 hour, until I don't even get upset anymore. And I'm just like, whatever, life, keep on throwing it at me. Like, I'm going to keep moving.
Do you find it that it's helpful to you, not only from like doing it day in and day out to kind of quiet your mind and balance, but even in like stressful moments where you have something like you just described, someone, pissed you off and you're like, man, like, why is this happening? And instead of kind of processing that like outwardly, where people maybe just emotionally just like explode, like, just go on a rampage or something, you just kind of go into some kind of meditative state. Do you employ it that way as well, or no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, okay, so as we're talking now, like I can feel sensations all over my body, which is wild. Like I feel like an alien. But yeah, so especially in certain situations when something arises that maybe, my evolutionary process feels like this is dangerous. And of course now that may be a fight with a boss at work. or a fight with a friend, because we don't have this fight or flight thing going on anymore, and we're not in like imminent danger. But, but yeah, my sensations light up. Like, it's like automatically when something changes like that, my body recognizes it right away. So instead of reacting, I'm able to first observe my sensations and then react. And so
that is
I think
such
my
a,
reactions are a lot calmer.
yeah, that is such a critical skill, I would say, to be able to get into that mode when something emotional and stressful happens. Because when we get into this reptilian brain, right, when you're exposed to some kind of a stress situation, and you just want to, again, fight or flight reaction. But if you can kind of hijack that mechanism where you go into that space where you just kind of instinctively respond, and you're almost like not yourself, you go into this reptilian mode. But if you can kind of redirect that and remind yourself and use some kind of techniques to calm yourself, then kind of like your higher level processing cognition comes back, and you're like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't, like, attack this person right now or respond in kind or what have you. And instead of kind of go inwards, and then just kind of be there in that moment and let it develop, and let it, kind of develop in front of you without you reacting to it. And my question to you is, how did you teach yourself to do that? Because that is so hard, because when you react to those things, they literally hijack your brain. You go into this mode of I call it the crazy mode. You just kind of like, and you just want to respond. But if you kind of intercept yourself, so to speak, and I found some ways and they're not 100% consistent, but I think I'm in my older age right now, so I'm a little bit more mellow in general. But I want to know, how are you? Because when I was in your age, like in my 20s, I was like, boom, it was just so quick to react. And then you may regret it later because you're like, oh, that was stupid. Why did I do that? But it's just that response is just so automatic. So how are you doing it to get into that mode, to not be hijacked by this reptilian brain reaction?
Well, I think that I'm just able to observe my thoughts and my sensations, and at a much greater capacity than I used to. So I think that it has to do a lot with practice. So after my first course, I actually got fired from my job, and I ended up like going into the woods and just like backpacking for a little while. And then I went and I moved down to Florida, and I found a course that wasn't far from Jacksonville. So it was a Vipassana center in Jessup, Georgia. And I ended up serving there for 3 10-day courses where I pretty much helped manage all of these women who were taking the course. And so I think that while I was managing the course, I was sitting for 7 hours a day, but I was also having to help all of these women who were going through their first 10-day course. And some people really freak out, right? Because it's a deep, deep operation on the mind. So we have women crying. We have women waking up in the middle of the night. We have women having panic attacks. And so I'm their main point of contact. And I'm sitting there, going through the same thing as them, but I can't even pay attention to everything that's going on within the framework of my body because I'm there to help 30 or 40 other women. And I think that was such a great experience for me because, regardless of everything that was going on with me, like all of these sankharas that were arising, this pain that was coming on my body, these emotions or these past things that I had to work through as I was on this 10-day course, I couldn't even really pay attention to them because I had to pay attention to so many other people. And I think that really taught me that whatever's going on right in front of me isn't important when it comes to the big picture. There are so many other things in the world that are way more important than me or what's going on in front of me, or maybe this fight that I have or the car that I wrecked. I've wrecked 8. So it's just none of that really matters because life is so beautiful and there are so many other things going on, and there's just so much more to it than just this ego, right? This me, my, I. But there is no me, there is no my, there is no I. We are all connected. And even though that sounds like some like hippie trip on acid, I felt it. Like I've literally felt all of my molecules just totally disperse. And so everything that happens that seemingly would tick you off just becomes so minuscule in regards to the big picture.
I'm so glad that you said that, because one of the, I think, and it's not 100% reliable, but most of the time when I get into, when I'm in a space of some kind of stress and I have this introspection to look at this, everything from a perspective of like the whole globe. So you think your problem right now is huge. Let's say, I don't know, my car broke down again or something, and I got to spend thousands of dollars, and you're like, the world is collapsing on you because you're in that state of like, how is this going to affect me? But if you have that in you to kind of pull out of that, this is like, you pull out and you're like, well, here's the whole planet. I'm here. I'm looking at it. It's like that little problem that you had is just, like you said, minuscule. And if you can reframe your mindset about it, then suddenly it doesn't become that big of a problem. And I think that's a key skill that most people should possess. I mean, we should probably be teaching kids that in schools so that they have that on their tool belt. So like when they get angry or they get passionate about something and they get like emotional about something, they can always kind of go back into that, hey, let me look at this from a different perspective and recenter. So I'm so glad that you said that, because it's such a critical skill. So tell me more about, your journey through meditation. How did it evolve, since you've been doing it for so long and you're doing it every day for so long? How did it evolve for you over time? What are you doing now that's different that you did, let's say, 5 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever?
Yeah. So I started 2 years ago, and then I took my first course, and then I served 3 courses. And then I got pretty involved in the community up here in the DC area. And then I took another 10-day course last December. I think that after my first 10-day course, I started to try to meditate daily, and I epically failed. And then when I had the community by my side in Jessup, I was doing really well. I think one thing is that before I was smoking a lot of weed, like especially when I was in college, and then like, before my first 10-day course, and then even after my first 10-day course. And I realized that, all of a sudden I felt so high on life that I just didn't even really feel the need to smoke or drink or to do any of these things anymore. Like, it's just like life was so beautiful. And if I drank, I didn't feel that same like sensation through my body, that same, that same joy that I feel. Yeah, connectedness. And so I'm sober now. I don't do any drugs or drink. And so that's a huge change. And I think it's a big change because, you come back into the world and your friends are like, what are you, in a cult? Like, what do you mean you're not going to like get drunk with us or smoke weed with us? And I think we live in a generation where, everybody is smoking weed or drinking, our parents, like our friends, that it's legal in DC now. It's legal in Colorado, California, I think too. And so it's just like a very normalized thing to go to these different sources of, having fun and going out. And I just don't really find, myself having fun going out and drinking or having fun smoking marijuana. Like, I find myself having fun when I'm doing something or trying to make an impact or testing things out, like on the Google algorithm.
Right. Would you say that would you say that smoking weed and doing that was a form of escapism for you in terms of just like relaxing to like, hey, I just need to smoke to kind of get disconnected from all this craziness that's happening? And would you attribute meditation as a tool that helped you kind of extract yourself from that? And now, tell me more I want to know about that transition. I think that's super interesting where you like, you did this. I mean, when you're younger, like obviously partying, college, stuff like that, and smoking and then that transition. Tell me about, like, do you remember that day, or was it several days? Was it extended period of time when you were transitioning? How did that whole thing happen from like smoking and drinking to just kind of meditating and using this as your tool to reconnect, to conduct your life the way you do right now?
Well, when I was in college, I was a bartender, right? So I was drinking a lot. Like we could drink for free on the job. Like, I mean, although they say you're not supposed to, all bosses kind of undercover encourage it. They want you to take shots with the customers. And then you also have a little bit more fun while you're bartending. And bartending was awesome because I paid for college that way. I'm totally zero student debt, which is really kind of unheard of for my generation.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. And so I just think that, like with drinking, I had some pretty bad experiences in college, as a woman and being in the Baltimore area. And so there came a point in my life where I just knew that like, I didn't want to drink as much. And then, once I was finished with college, I was drinking maybe a couple of beers, but I just didn't really feel the need for it. And that was something that kind of started before Vipassana.
Okay.
And then once I took Vipassana, I just was like, no, I'm not even really worried about having a beer anymore. Even though I do love the taste of beer, I think it tastes great.
You know what? I really believe that it's all about moderation. I think it's the pendulum. To me, a lot of things that are happening in our lives is like a swinging pendulum. It's you have extremes and you have the sweet spot. Once in a while, if you want to enjoy something, do it, as long as it doesn't take over you. If it's something that just kind of controls your life when you need to do it and that's your thing, like I come Friday from work and then that's what I do, and then you're not in control. Sort of like you're not the driver. It's like some other things are controlling you. But once in a while, if you want to have a glass of wine or beer or scotch or whatever, like it's all there. It's but if it's, as long as it doesn't become an issue in your life. But yeah,
I think so too. I think it's really important. And I think marijuana probably was a big issue in my life. I think I was smoking way too much, and it definitely was a form of escapism for me because, I was watching a lot of documentaries and I learned so much about the history of the world. And I was especially learning a lot about World War I and World War II history. And I was just like, what humanity did this? The Holocaust happened. And then I actually traveled, and I lived in Berlin, and I went to some of the concentration camps. And so I really got that eerie feeling. And while I was learning so much about World War I and World War II history, I also lived in Paris for a little while. And it was really just so deep and heavy. And I remember the last museum I walked in, I cried. I couldn't stop crying.
Yeah. It's such a sobering experience. I think everyone should go to like a concentration camp and see what people went through and the total disconnect from the dehumanitizing such an experience that people are just you're there's no words. You just have to be there and experience it, because it's just like people treated in horrible ways and just dehumanized is the word that I was looking for. That you almost can't believe that someone did that. It's that's why it's so hard until you see it with your eyes. You're there and you experience it. So yeah, I would encourage, like, as it's such a huge wake up call for a lot of people to kind of experience that. So that's kind of how it seemed like it was an effect on you as well.
Yeah, it was a huge wake up call, and especially because I was supposed to be a history teacher before I graduated college. And then I started going into these classrooms, and I learned that I wasn't allowed to teach about certain things that had happened in the country, things like intense moments with the Jim Crow laws and experiences where you would have like a Black man hanging from a tree and all of these white people dancing below with cocktails in their hands. And I was prohibited from showing an image like that to a class of 8th graders. But if I can't show that image, how are we ever going to learn?
Right.
How are we ever going to learn from these experiences? And so I actually put together a lesson plan knowing that I would get kicked out. And because I was so pissed off, right? And I couldn't, I just knew I couldn't teach anymore. I knew that, I had learned all of this stuff. And if I was forced to teach, half of the truth, then I couldn't go on living. I couldn't go on teaching.
Very interesting. Was it like the educational environment in which you were working that kind of put these guidelines that like, yeah, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, even though those would be sort of like the right things to do in order to visualize and expose what things really were instead of just kind of like words. I mean, words are powerful, especially when you can imagine things. But if you can't imagine how it was, the imagery is like what's so intense, right? Like that's why like when you see images of people and whether it was concentration camps or lynchings or things like that, those are like the things that are just speaking to a lot of people so intensely. And if you can't use that in a classroom to kind of show students, show kids the severity of these situations, then what can you do to kind of teach them, right?
Yeah. I think it creates even further division because it creates this, something that we try to sweep under the rug, but we can't sweep it under the rug because we have the internet. And if you teach it to kids, then you can start to show them like, look, this is what happened, but we do not have to suffer for the choice of our ancestors. What we can do is make a change and not act that way. But this is the reality of what happened. And it doesn't make you a bad person. This is just, what happened in history. And in order for this not to repeat itself, we have to show the truth. We can't sweep it under the rug.
Right.
So it's intense.
It's true. So let's get back to meditation and how that kind of folded into all of this. So you said like, no, I can't be teaching. This is if I can't do these things, like if I can really stay true to it, then I don't want to be teaching. What happened next and folded into the meditation?
I mean, after that, I was on Adderall like through a lot of college, right? So I was like taking, I would say 60 milligrams of Vyvanse during the day and then 30 at night while I was bartending. I don't know who my psychologist was, but they were just throwing the pills at me.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because I'm curious. I've never done these things. So I've never been pushed into that, but I've heard that it's just so easy. It was just kind of like prescribing vitamins. You go and see someone and like, all right, here's the things that you should take. And then so how did you start on that? How did you even get to that point? I guess you went to see someone and then they just kind of prescribed it or how were you introduced to that?
I pretty much just went to my doctor and was like, hey, I'm having a lot of trouble focusing in school. Actually, I had hypothyroidism, and it was causing me to gain a lot of weight. And I was falling asleep a lot. So I thought like, what is this? What's going on? So they prescribed me levothyroxine, and then they also prescribed me Vyvanse so that I could like focus and stay awake. And I also had a familial history. My little brother had really bad ADHD. So because I was able to show that like both my mom and my brother had taken the medication, they let me take it. But all I had to do was fill out a questionnaire, and it just had a checklist. Like, is it focused? No. What happens when you read a book? Does your mind wander? Yes. The questionnaire is pretty straightforward. They don't hook you up to any machines or like do any blood tests. But I pretty much got it like very, very easily. And I started taking it from the beginning of college when I went to community college, and then later I transferred to university. So I was on Adderall and Vyvanse for about 4 years. And I knew that like it wasn't right, because I would go on these like rants so often, and I would just like constantly be thinking about such like big ideas, but I wouldn't be able to like refine my ideas. And it was just really tough, and I got really depressed. And then I went completely cold turkey off of it after college, right? And then I got really depressed because I had this huge come down, right? I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like my brain didn't work. I felt like I was stupid. And I would just like lie in my bed and like smoke a lot of weed and watch like anime, which like,
what's wrong with that?
I mean, it's probably the best thing I could have watched, right? Because like anime is so different from any other cartoon. It's all about like, you can beat the world no matter what. Like, yeah. So yeah, like I went from like this, like being so involved in like documentaries and everything that was going on in the world to like, oh my God, like I can't even teach about this stuff. So what can I do? So then I just like, you know, got high all the time and watched anime and went back to bartending, but I still like was writing the whole time. I've always been writing throughout like my whole life. I have like probably like 40 notebooks. So I'm glad that like I've always been able to keep that as something like steady. And I think that it's really helped me my whole life, like just keep an eye on what I'm doing. And when I start going down that drain, like I can come back to it when my pen hits the paper.
Right.
And that's really wonderful.
I want to ask you, I want to ask you one question before I forget about it, is like when you decided to quit the Adderall and all those other things, cold turkey, what was the precursor to that? Was it some kind of realization? I mean, what made you, because stopping it like cold turkey, did something happen that made you make that decision? So you know, okay, let's just cut it off, or was it, how did it happen?
I mean, it was just like, I'm done with school. I had gotten to the point where, you know, I was really, really thin. Like my eating habits were very strange. I started grinding my teeth a lot, to the point where I had like, you know, these scars in my mouth, like on the insides of my mouth. I was really shaky. And I just, even though I could get a lot of things done very quickly, I just felt like there has to be a natural way to do this. You know, my body shouldn't be relying on these methamphetamines essentially, because this is not healthy for my body. This is going to cause me liver problems later on. I also felt like my emotions were really out of whack. I would all of a sudden like, you know, have this emotion, but then I would totally ignore it and I would dig myself into work. But again, like you can't sweep things under the rug because they always come back on the surface.
Right.
So I was just sweeping things under the rug and then digging myself into this work. And then I realized, whoa, like I'm so unhealthy, like mentally, physically, on many levels. And I really think, you know, Adderall kind of stops you from being human and allowing yourself to feel emotion. It stops you from being able to really work through your emotions and recognize that, you know, emotions are important things to work through. And they're very sensitive and they're very real. And if you take this Adderall 24/7, then you're just going to lose who you are and just dig yourself into, I think, whatever society tells you to, right? Because what is school?
Interesting. Yeah.
It's like something that we're forced to do, essentially.
Right. That's what I heard, that most students take Adderall and other things for, you know, speed, to hyper focus, and again, this is kind of like study time, so I need all the medical help. so they get into that. But it was interesting to hear you say that you had some kind of sort of like self-awareness about this, that you kind of, you didn't, it doesn't sound like you had a singular moment where you had, oh, I need to get off of it and that's it. It sounds like you just said like, okay, you know, you finished the school, so that was kind of one of the tools that you had on your tool belt, taking these pills to help you focus, to help you perform at school, right? And then you kind of noticed all these other negative things, and that kind of built up and made you transition and be self-aware of like, okay, these are negatives, I need to kind of peel away. I got to believe that a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that self-realization. They just kind of continue until physically they have some kind of symptoms or physically have issues. And then that's kind of like the stoplight for them where they realize that, oh, this is actually like, I feel like my liver function is, they do some lab work and like liver function comes back and it's like, oh, your liver is shot. So you need to get off of whatever you're on. And that's a realization for you. But it sounds like for you, it was more of a cognitive way where you realized that intellectually that these are things that you just don't want to continue, which is, good for you on that.
Thanks. Yeah, it was hard. And I think that like with Vipassana, not only are you able, like now that I'm doing Vipassana, I recognized obviously a while ago that Vyvanse and Adderall weren't right for me, but I should have recognized a long time ago that the health impacts that it was having on my body. And now that I'm able to focus so intensely on my sensations, I'm able to recognize the smallest health impacts. So I actually had hypothyroidism, which I mentioned earlier. And after I started Vipassana, I was able to focus very intensely on what I was eating and what I was putting into my body. So I went through a 6 months cleanse of being raw vegan. So I didn't eat like any bread. I didn't eat rice. Like I just ate raw veggies for 6 months. And I was able to clear out all of my organs and stop taking all medicine altogether. So I no longer take levothyroxine for my thyroid. And I had pretty high levels of thyroid dysfunction. And I was not able to stay awake. I would fall asleep for like 18 hours. And now I don't have these problems at all. Granted, I haven't gone to a doctor to test it, but I don't think I ever would have been able to go on such a strict diet like that if it weren't for Vipassana, to just like stay focused and like really recognize that my body needed healing. And to this day, I put one thing in my body and like my entire body reacts, right? So if I eat a burger, like all of a sudden, like my entire body relaxes and I feel this heavy sensation. And I'm vegetarian now too. That's another big change.
So I need to intercept that for a sec, because I probably like everybody, I'm going through like different types of things and feedings and I probably could not live without meat right now, but I do want to try at some point, because I believe in experimenting on myself, because I don't need anybody's permission. Yeah. I did like a carnivore diet where I ate pretty much just meat and maybe some eggs for some time, and it felt good, but I do want to try other things as well. And there's just so much information and misinformation and different perspectives. And I don't believe that there's one thing for someone. I think that everybody has to figure out what are the optimal things that their body needs. And so I don't think there's like one size fits all. We should be doing this or we shouldn't be doing that. And but I'm going through that journey of like of trying different things. So I tried meat diet. It seemed to be working. I do like variety of things, so I don't think I could just be on meat all the time, because I would just get bored. But I do want to try vegetarianism, and maybe even going vegan as well, and just see what that does to my body as well. So I'd love to hear like, how is your transition in doing that, and how is it right now? And because it's a little bit scary, in a way for me, because I'm just so used to like having having meat. I love, steaks and it's like, I'm a man, I need a steak, but I do want to try other dietary things and maybe figure something out in the middle somewhere. I don't know. So how was that 6 month raw veggie? I mean, that's like taken to an extreme. I mean, you're not even cooking stuff. Like you literally are. Yeah. So what made you do that? And how did you get into that? Like, was it something someone told you, or was it just like something that you felt your body needed, or, how did you get on that?
Well, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos on like hypothyroidism.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and like how to heal your thyroid and different things like that, because it's considered uncurable, right? And luckily after my first Vipassana and I got fired and whatever, my best friend lived in Hampton in Baltimore, and she was like, "Yo, just come like move in with me and my fiance for really cheap." So I got to live with them for like $250 a month, which is really cheap. So like I was just freelancing, like I was freelancing really small amounts of work. I was freelance writing and doing some freelance social media. And so I was working from home, and I didn't have much of a rent. So I literally had so much time to just focus on like, you know, my health and cooking all these awesome like meals. And you're right, it wasn't cooking, it was mostly blending. And so like I got very, very crafty, and like I would blend like avocado and like banana and all these different things, and I'd make like homemade yogurt, and like I put a bunch of like pumpkin seeds and like chia seeds and flax seeds, and I'd make sure I was getting all my protein. But I was so hungry, like I was having to eat like 4 or 5 meals a day. So as you can imagine, like if you're just eating veggies, it gets expensive. Like I would say a little bit more expensive than a meat diet, because I was so hungry.
Because you need a lot.
Yeah, because I can't even eat rice or bread. And before that, I tried going gluten-free for a while. And the problem with going gluten-free was like, I just love bread so much. And so like I would go gluten-free, and then I'd like, all of a sudden when no one was watching, I'd like stuff a whole loaf of bread in my mouth. Like I would cheat like too often, and then I'd be like, I'm gluten free, but then I would like crave bread so bad that like I'd go somewhere alone and just like stuff a loaf of bread down my throat. So like luckily, like switching to like vegetarianism, like I haven't had that urge at all to like go like eat a bunch of meat. And I think that like I never really liked meat that much to begin with. Like I would always like slide it over to my brothers on the dinner table. And so I think that it's been a pretty easy transition for me. Also, Vipassana makes like the best vegetarian and vegan food I've ever had in my life. Like you go there and you eat these meals, like, and you're just like, whoa, this is food. Like they really feed you great when you're there. I mean, it's some of the best food I've ever had. And so when you see the way they cook with so much care, and you see the way these veggies can be cooked, you're like, wow, I think I can do this because this tastes like better than anything I've had before. And that really inspired me to try cooking and to really focus and to treat it kind of like, you know, a meditative experience, and to just go slowly and to love what I'm doing and to pay attention to the food, because really we should be paying close attention to everything that we're doing, right? We should put so much intention into it, like, because everything has energy, whether it's a computer or a piece of lettuce, like there's energy in that. And so
I'm so glad that you say that. It's such a different experience. And we are, as people, in this civilization, we are just so pressed for time. This fast pace of our living. You go and eat. You eat like, you know, you just open up wide, swallow like a pelican, and you move on, right? You go on versus spending time, like chew your food and actually focus on how it tastes. And you're going to get more enjoyment out of it than just kind of like this process of loading up your belly until your brain tells like, oh, you're full, you're good, go and do some work. And I think what you just mentioned, that's so important for people to understand and tap into. It's so important that and I'm guilty of it just as anybody else, but I do have those moments when I do realize that, ooh, enjoy this, slow down. Especially now, maybe we should start like some kind of a movement during this coronavirus quarantine. Everybody at home, like they should be podcasting, they should be video conferencing, and everyone is slowly eating and chewing and enjoying their foods and changing their mindset about this, and just kind of rewiring their brains to slow down, because that's what I think is happening. We're just like in this constant, rat race, and we're not enjoying things as much because we just are pressed for doing things so fast. So I'm happy that you mentioned that, because I think that's a very key thing to do. Slow down and focus on whatever you do. Like even like, you can actually take so much pleasure. I don't know about you, but when I have those moments when I realize like I can be kind of present right now, I can enjoy this moment, and literally like even putting a cup with water or something on the table, and you just set it down, and when you pay attention to that activity and you set it down and you feel it, there's some kind of there's pleasure that you can take out of even simple things like that. And if you can get pleasure out of that, then you can take even more an immense pleasure out of other things if you focus on them and not just take things mechanically, like, just move on.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's really about like giving everything the attention that it deserves. I mean, I've even, really focused on music in a different way since being with Vipassana. I mean, I used to just like pick up my guitar and try to watch a YouTube video and try to learn that way. But now I just give each string and each note the attention that it deserves. And I explore my curiosity instead of trying to like immediately learn a song. And through that, I begin to love the instrument a lot more because I give the instrument the attention that it deserves. I explore it kindly and I play the notes with respect.
And is that something that came out of the Vipassana meditation? Is that where you found this focus on doing things, on giving it time?
I think so. Yeah, definitely focus. And I think that, it's tough because we live in this world, right, where everything is so instant. Everything's instant. And not only that, we have this thing called infinite scroll. So not only is everything instant, but like we don't have any time to be bored anymore. And if we don't have any time to even have that like small amount of boredom because it's filled up with instant gratification and infinite scroll, then how can we really know who we are? How can we really know that what we're doing right now is like what we should be doing if we fill up all our time and we don't know how to be alone?
Isn't that what retirement is for?
No. I mean, like, I would say that like I've become so much more active, like I just can't stop doing things. I mean, I notice my mind, and like if I sit idly for even one moment on social media, or, if I watch if I go down a rabbit hole and I watch some stupid videos, like I recognize it after maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes an hour or two. But before, like, I might have gone down these rabbit holes for months or weeks. I might have spent all my spare time scrolling through social feeds or watching Netflix. I barely even like watch TV anymore. There are very like few things that I watch. I feel like, content is also a form of food. It's something that we're metabolizing. And I was reading this Deepak Chopra book earlier today, actually, and he was talking about how each person has about 25,000 hours of conditioning from their parents, from the media, from commercials and advertisements. So how can you really know who you are if you've been conditioned for 25,000 hours of your life?
Right.
So aside from like all of that we're consuming constantly, how do you figure out how to change your world when you've been told how your world is or who you are or who you're supposed to be?
Right. And it's kind of like this top down approach, right? Where they just tell you, this is what success is. This is what this is. This is what relationships are like. Like you getting it almost like a prescription, right? You're getting like, this is what it means. Yeah. And this is what's expected of you as well. And so you have these social constructs already presented to you, and then you have to subscribe to them to fit in. And you don't have the time, like you said, to explore yourself and explore your own journey because you're chasing other things outwardly out there. And if you don't achieve them exactly the way they are sort of described out there, then you're a failure, and then you have that stress. And I think it's been described a lot on when people are following these social media streams and they just get depressed because they're looking at all these glamorized personalities or people living their lives and how awesome their lives are, and then they're like, "Oh, my life just sucks. I hate it," versus just focusing on your life and do your own thing.
Yeah. And it's tough because, it's not only that we're defined by likes, but we're also defined by this thing in a system from the time we're 5 years old till 18 called a grade. And we're defined a grade based off a standard system rather than based off our curiosity and, what leads us down, what we may be inspired by, or, how we might fall in love with something. Like how do you define someone who's done something great in the world? And that's what we're not taught in school. We're not taught to be leaders. We're taught to get an A. And what does an A matter? What it's just a construction from society. Like if you think about, I think it was Charles Darwin, he like dropped out of school multiple times and he barely graduated, and everyone told him like, you're going to be nothing. And now he's the father of modern biology because all he did was sit around and stare at nature all day. And, like now he made all these crazy discoveries that are part of the modern curriculum. And yet the modern curriculum doesn't allow us time to make these discoveries.
How wild is that, huh? They should be like, hey, look at this dude. He did all these great things. And how did he do them? Did he study in a university in a structured format? No, he went out there and explored, right? But in a way, I get it, how our society wants to structuralize everything, because then we have these metrics and we have these yardsticks that we use to kind of track progress. And then, if you get a bachelor's degree, that's what it means. You had some kind of schooling. But I think it's just such a, especially nowadays, it's just such a, it's just, gosh, it's just so inadequate is the word that I want to use. It's inadequate for reality because we want to quantize everything. And this master's degree equals this master's degree. And this person who finished this at Harvard and this person who finished this at Yale, this is what you can expect, because that's kind of like you're getting this quantized description of what they are supposed to be. But there's still people and humans behind those degrees, and they have lifelong experiences, and they may be still approaching things differently, yet we want to put them in that kind of box that we can then sell, because then it's like buying a product, right? It's like buying a toilet paper, that every roll is going to be more or less the same. And I think that's what we want out of people too. Like, you're just another roll of toilet paper. You're exactly the same as the other one. I know how to use you, and therefore I can interact with you, and I will not give you more time of my life because I don't have time to get to know you better, right? And I think that's kind of like how I see a lot of things in society. They're just like so messed up because of this, trying to put everything in, define everything, identify everything, put everything into specific boxes so that we can deal with things. And that's not how life is, right?
No, it's not how life is. And it makes people forget, or it makes people not realize that they have something really awesome to contribute to society, because none of us are the same. Right? Like when I sit down and I write, my morning pages, I write 3 pages every morning. And when I sit down and I write those pages, nobody else can write what comes out of me. And if you were to sit down and write 3 pages in the morning, nobody else would be able to write what you write. So if we all have this uniqueness to us, then we must all have different things to contribute to the world. And it's just that realization that we have to come to, and that belief, but our beliefs get bogged down by standards and by deadlines and by like this thing called a clock. So we don't get to really pause and go inside. And, every saint since the beginning of time has said, like, you will find knowledge within, in all kinds of different ways. I think I wrote about it once, but I'm not sure if I have it available right now. But it's true. And so it can be tough because we just think that, we just forget, we forget that we are these really incredibly unique beings that have this innate power within us to actually do something and to make a happy life for ourselves.
I really hope that this whole situation that we're in right now with coronavirus, COVID-19, and how it's kind of putting our society upside down right now. We're told to, the whole quarantining is happening, staying at home. Multiple states right now have put out regulations that don't want people to hang out there and just want to have them just stay home, self-quarantine. I so hope that those people will find this time. I mean, it's going to be difficult for some because it's going to be stressful for them because income and life and all of that, right? But I'm hoping that for those who, some of the employers will cover things, and there's going to be maybe some programs right now to help people out. I hope that they will take some of that time and they will instead of maybe binge watch Netflix and just kill that time in some way, that they will take the time for that self exploration, to go inwards, to maybe meditate a little bit and see if that opens up. Because if this is your time to not have any excuses, people, right? This is your time to be like, I have to be at home anyways. You might as well do something good with this time, right? Instead of killing it and then going back to the rat race when this whole thing just opens up again, when this whole Corona thing passes. So I'm really hopeful that's going to happen for some people, and it will for some. But
I think so too. I actually just started my YouTube channel, and it has a 24/7 live stream of reading music. And I just did my first what to read during COVID-19 video. And they're all books on like spirituality or going within, and some of them are more like quantum physics focused. So I'm going to be doing probably a series of videos on that. I put my first one up today.
Excellent. So, what's the name of your channel?
Wildest Moon.
Oh, perfect. Well, naturally.
Yeah, naturally.
Got to keep it. Yeah, got to get that branding. Got to get that consistency.
Exactly.
That's the SEO person speaking now. So you're doing that, and so what else are you doing nowadays? Now that you're stuck at home, you're still working remotely, right?
Yeah, I'm working remotely. I'm working on an article right now for Direction, and I'm sort of trying to play with the algorithm a little bit. And so I won't go too much into that. But so I'm working on that. I'm working on my YouTube channel. I'm working on my website, which is pretty much almost done. And it's essentially, I have this function where you pop a pill every day, right? So you go at the top of my browser and you hit pop a pill, and you can actually pop a daily pill of inspiration. And I really wanted to create this, especially because there was this TED Talk that I watched by like Sanmeet. She's this Indian neuroscientist, and her name is Sanmeet. I forget her last name, but she really inspired me because, here it is, Sanmeet Sethi. She really inspired me because she talked about how, so many people are on depression pills across the world, and we're all taking these depression pills. But what she discovered was that gratuity is stronger than a depression pill. But the difference is, a depression pill will give you instant gratification, but gratuity will take 6 months to kick in. So you have to take gratuity like a pill. You have to, you have to write every day, I'm thankful, even if you don't feel thankful, even if you want to, throw it away and not swallow it. If it's tough to swallow, you still have to sit down and you have to write, I'm thankful. And I think this is the same way with all affirmations. So what I want to do is get people to come to my website and take these daily affirmations, because you have to take affirmations daily for them to become reality.
Right.
And I'm going to do this other YouTube video on Louise Hayes, who wrote You Can Heal Your Life. And she talks a lot about how in order to create these realities out of your affirmations, you have to hit the unconscious mind. And by doing that, you have to look in the mirror, because the eyes are a window to your unconscious mind. And so if you look in the mirror and you tell yourself something daily, then you can start to change your reality, right? Because language is energy. And so if you can start to mold energy, then you can start to mold your life. And I really think it's important to do daily affirmations and not to give up on them. If you give up 3 months in, just like if I gave up on my meditation 3 months in, like I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be able to sit down and focus and actually feel like I am making progress with my meditation and go into that complete solitude.
Right.
But I had to keep going at it. And that's what you have to do with these affirmations. And not everybody can meditate for 10 days or for 2 hours a day. And so what they can do is something small, and they can just take a daily pill of affirmation.
Right.
They can say daily, I am in control, even just that. If you tell yourself daily, I'm in control, even when you don't feel in control, even when your life's a total mess. But if you just keep saying it, you're going to put that energy out to the universe, and you're going to start to see your life change. But it's not going to happen instantly. And we're so used to everything happening right now, that it's crazy for us, to try to do that or to have that strong vision to make sure we're putting in those daily affirmations, getting our daily dose.
How do you do things? How do you create your habits? Because my impression of you, Sarah, is that you have, you're very structured about certain things. You do things, you're habitual, and for me, it's not the lack of information. Information is out there, knowledge is out there. Speaking with a lot of people, I get a lot of great input and a lot of great wisdom that, based on their lives. Implementation is always key, right? It's about execution. You can have tons of ideas, you can have tons of knowledge, but execution, acting on those things are key, or critical things that you need to do. How do you go about that? If, let's say, you've learned something new and you decided you're going to do it, how do you make yourself get into almost habitual kind of pursuit? So you don't peel off. Let's say you're going to do, I'm going to do something, and now this is what I want to do right now. And then after 3 days, you're like, oh, no, I'm bored. Let me get back to my own, standard mode of operation. How do you get into that so you can do like 6 months of being on a vegetarian diet or vegan diet? How do you make yourself meditate every day for 2 hours? What are some of the tips and tricks that you've developed? Good and bad, for that matter, or surprised ones. But did you surprise yourself with something that helped you do something every single day? How do you go about that?
Wow. So I definitely think that I'm very surprised about almost everything that happens around me. And to be honest, after meditating, I kind of felt like the universe was more in control than I was, I ended up landing here in Maryland last May, so exactly a year ago, before I became a SEO strategist / web developer. And when I landed here, I wrecked my car and I started writing, and I realized that I can't really create a set schedule for myself. Even though it seems like I would be so into these habits, I'm really not as much of a habitual person as I'd like to be, but maybe that's not the answer. I find that I just focus on the moment and I let myself be led. Not in work, because in work I have to get things done, but other times in work, yeah, I do that. And that's why I think I have become such a great SEO strategist, because I let my curiosity lead the way and everything. Give every task the attention it deserves. I don't sit there and say, I'm going to start this task and then I'm going to throw it away. No, I start this task and I don't expect an end result. I have no expectation in the end. I just start it and I see what comes out of it. But I don't expect it to be great. I don't expect it to be terrible. I just do it because it's in front of me and it has to be done. And I give it the attention that it deserves, whether I want to do it or not. I look past that. And I just say, hey, look, this is something, it needs attention. And so I will do it. And by doing that, things start to kind of interconnect. And I see, oh, wait, I had to spend all this time, writing about naturopathy because one day I was going to heal my thyroid. And if I hadn't given those articles the attention that they deserved, then I wouldn't know so much about my body, or about how to heal my body. And so I think that, even though you're doing something that you don't feel like you want to do right now, if you give it the attention that it deserves, then it's going to help you out later in life. It's going to become your friend.
Oh my gosh. So, I just have to repeat what you said because it was just so beautiful. It's just ringing in my brain right now. Focus on the moment and allow yourself to be led. That is just so beautiful. Are we accrediting this to you, or is that something that you got from someone or somewhere? Is that something you came up with?
I think it's kind of emergence, you know what I mean? Of meditation, focusing on the moment, and then The Artist's Way, which is a book that really led me and helped me out. And
I love it.
That book's great. I don't know if you've read it. It's a spiritual path to higher creativity.
No, I haven't read it, but where it led you, I love that, because I think that, some of the things that kind of I live by, some of the quotes that I love, the Buddha's, be open to everything and attached to nothing is a huge thing that I try to kind of constantly have in my mind when things are happening in front of me, so that you don't have. I mean, there's this is such a hard thing to do for most humans, right? Because it's like we are goal oriented. We need to plan things. We can't just kind of like, oh, everything's gonna be just fine. We still need to kind of practically do things, right? You plan out like, what are you gonna do tomorrow? Well, I have this, and that. But at the same time, we want to tap into something that's either spiritual or something that's kind of more has this grander picture, bigger picture. So we're not just lost in this kind of rat race of things. But combining those two sometimes can be so difficult. Like, that's why I was kind of asking you, like, how are you making these things stick for you? Because being an SEO expert, being a web developer, when you're working with a client, they have set expectations, right? They will be like, oh, well, I want this website on so-and-so deadline. I want these things over here. And so combining that kind of more rigid or rigorous approach to developing something and delivering a product with, oh, I'm just going to allow myself, go and see what happens, is great maybe from like a creative perspective, but then like, you still kind of have a pressure like, well, I need to deliver it on time too. So how do you combine those, right? How do you marry those two together to stay sane? That's a trick.
It's really tough. And I actually have like a list of daily pills that I take, and I set them out as reminders throughout the day. I'll read them to you if you want. They're like a little bit, they're a little bit wild. And I want, this is like how I want to make sure that, I stay up to date with myself. My first one is I'm slender and fit. And then my
Which
second
you are.
one is oh, thank you. And then my second one is I'm a wild artist. And then I'm a prolific and unique writer. And then at around 3:00, what comes in is my emotions do not rely upon anyone else. I find emotional comfort within. And then around 8:00, I am in control. At 5:15 in the morning, I feel calm and certain that what is right for me will always appear. And then around 4 p.m., I allow my body to relax into the fiery, playful energy that moves through me. And then around 9:00 a.m., I trust and connect with others that share my vision. Around 2:00, I don't give a fuck. And then around 9 p.m., I have a new one about like how I foresee my future. So I wrote, I'm a traveling poet and novelist. I tap into my inner divinity and create words that help others heal.
I love it. Do you set those as a calendar reminder so that it just pops up on your phone or in your browser or something? How do you use those reminders?
iPhone has a reminders app. Which is really helpful because it keeps everything separate from my busy calendar. Because obviously I have meetings with clients and other things that I have to keep in contact with, like my coworkers.
I just imagine like you getting I don't give a fuck at 2:00 with the client. Like, yep. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like they would be pissed about that. And I also don't want my coworkers to see my calendar, because right. I share my calendar with all my coworkers. And of course I have my personal email too, but it's much easier to just have it come up personally on my phone through my reminders app.
And you get this, do you do the same once every day, or do you kind of alternate them, or how does that?
So I add to it if I need to, and then I do alternate them once I feel like they've set in. So if I feel like this has now become a pattern in my life and I feel comfortable, then I'll take them away and I'll put in a new affirmation, but to really truly believe constantly I am in control is huge. And that's a really hard one because, life is so crazy and our minds really bog us down and we feel sad and upset and we feel like we're out of control. And so it's a really great reminder to have. And I think that, I've had that one on my phone for about 3 months now. And it's finally coming to a point where I feel like I am in control. Even though I can't control what's going on outside the world, I can control what's going on inside my body. And I can control what I eat, and I can control how I'm building a website or I can control the fact that I just wrote a book and turned it into these poetry competitions, and I don't feel stressed about it, and I'm still working a full-time job, and I'm still able to like kind of balance like all this other stuff. And I'm not like, before I used to be like, you haven't accomplished your dreams yet. Like you haven't like gone and done this yet. But now it's kind of like, like I'm working at it little by little, and it's not like I've just completely forgotten about it, but I'm in control, and I can put, 15 minutes a day into it, maybe 2 hours a day into it. And that's okay.
Right.
It's moving at pace.
It's an interesting and delicate balance between being in control, but also being comfortable with being, it's going to sound wrong, out of control. I meant to say in the sense of letting yourself in a space where it's okay not to have control. When I was in my 20s, I was all about control. I was, success was really well defined, reading a lot of books that kind of described and like what success means, like, oh, by 40, you got to have this, you got to be millionaire, you got to have 2 cars, house, there's all these different things, check boxes that are supposed to like make you happy. And so I realized that, that kind of propensity to chase that is just so ill-advised, because it's something that someone just describes for you. So they already kind of tell you what success means and what happiness means. And it means different things to different people. And so if you want to do those things, you want to be like in such a huge control. And if something doesn't go your way, then you just freak out and you're just upset and depressed and all those different things that are just kind of tugging you and all over the place. Versus if you set some things and you are, again, open to things, open to possibilities, but not attached to them, I find that it's like a way more balanced way for me right now, where I just kind of go more with the flow of things. And as things open up, as these things develop, as things close, I just go along with them. And of course, I have plans, I have some things, but I'm not attached to them so rigidly that it creates stress to me if they don't happen exactly the way I want them. And I think that kind of malleability to this is allows you to be just a little bit more mellow and just kind of go with the flow. And one more tangent, and I'm gonna ask you a question about something that I want to know. Someone recently said they were doing studies why some people live longer than others. And they were perplexed because some people, typically it's like, oh, well, healthy lifestyle, eat right things, and so on and so forth. And yes, that's a huge thing. Environment, how it affects you. Are you in a polluted environment? All those different things are factors. But apparently one of the biggest ones is that people, the underlying common denominator, because there are people that get to live 90 or 100 and they smoke all their lives, they have bad habits, they drink, they just like, you're like, how are you doing this? You're defying like all common knowledge and, common sense knowledge, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you shouldn't be living 100. Like, my uncle was, 52 and died of heart attack, and he was, working out and, all these healthy things. So what was interesting, what some of the things that they found is that people that tend to live longer are people that are a little bit more relaxed about everything. They just kind of go mellow on things. They don't let themselves stress out, which kind of makes sense. The underlying science that they were pushing through this article was that it's about the cortisol stress hormone and how that impacts all of your systems in your body. And then if someone has this chronic stress, so kind of life continuously stressful, even if it may be fulfilling financially, someone who has tons of money, but constant stress has a tendency to live not to live as long, because this constant dose of cortisol is just destroying your system, your body from within. So with that said, I want to ask you, what is happiness to you? How do you define happiness? What is happiness to you?
I think that that happiness is just being alive in the present moment, right? Aside from my thoughts going back and forth, because we have this pattern of our mind. It either drifts into the future or drifts into the past. And so to be able to just like grasp the present moment, even if it's just for 5 minutes, and to look at something as if I'm a little child, as if I've never seen it before. As if each time I go, sit down on the mat, it's going to be new. It's going to be a new adventure. Each time I go and look at, an SEO strategy, it's going to be a new adventure. I'm going to learn something new. Instead of looking at everything like it's the same day in and day out, I look at it as everything in the present moment as something that I can learn from. And I think happiness is just being able to be present. As simple as that sounds,
I love it.
It's just, you feel like a child again.
Enjoy the moment, moment by moment. Say that again.
I was like, and not to quote Jesus, but but there's a verse in the Bible that says, unless you become like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Right. And the kingdom of heaven is within the framework of the body. And the kingdom of hell is too, hell is maybe the stress. We're submitting ourselves to this fire, to this, terrible feeling within inside, but really we have control over that. And maybe we don't, because we haven't really learned how to have control over our minds, because we aren't even taught in school about the very basic pattern of our thoughts, which can only go two ways. And so, how can you blame someone for causing constant turmoil and hell in their own minds when they haven't been taught any different? So I feel very thankful that I've been taught this, because there are so many crazy things going out in the world, and I'm able to remain calm, and I feel very lucky and blessed for that.
It's amazing that we get these bodies and they don't come with a manual, and we have to figure out things, and it's just so funny. We're struggling throughout our lives, and we're pulled left and right and all over the place to kind of figure things out, and it's amazing. We just don't come with a manual, and we lean on our parents to give us some kind of guidance, but a lot of it is just trial and error and figuring things out for yourself. But I think key things of getting introspection is important to when you realize something. Slow down, be in that present moment. And so this kind of takes us back to meditation, right? Which is being in the present moment, being comfortable and being in that space where you don't necessarily have to run in your mind, long list of things to do that you have on your agenda and being stressed out about it. And that's what meditation can offer. So what is next for you? That's one question that I have now that you are where you are. And then the other question that I have that I didn't want to forget is about when did you start meditation? Because I know before when we talked about you had some experiences early in your childhood that I wanted to kind of tap into, because that is just such a profound thing. So maybe let's start with that. When did you start meditation, and how did that affect your life early on?
Okay. Okay. So this is kind of a strange story, right? And I don't like telling it that much, but you want
I'm kind of pushing you into it a little bit, because I think it's just so fascinating, because it's such a wild journey to experience that. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of share that story of yours with others who should hear about it.
So when I was very, very young, I got really sick, and I was bit by a tick. So I got Lyme's disease, and I was around 6 or 7 years old, and nobody believed me. I went to the doctors, and the tests back then, they were coming up negative, and I think they still do today. It's very difficult to test for Lyme's. And so as this little child, I had nobody believe me, but I could feel that my body was getting sick, and it was difficult for me to walk. My parents, they were told that I had psychological issues, which they then led on to my teachers. And sometimes, I would fall down at school, and I wouldn't be able to walk, and everybody would be like, "What's wrong with her?" And of course, the rumor goes around, "Oh, nothing's wrong with her. This girl is faking it. She just wants attention." So everybody was saying that this little girl just wants attention. And so I just was totally alone, and I was still a child. So I was very intrigued by things. Like I would pick up flowers and like smash them and make little perfumes for my mom. And I would just always be outside in the woods, and I would just go traveling into the woods behind my house by myself. And I would sit by the stream, and I started just focusing on my breath. And I started writing, and I started writing poetry when I was 7. I wrote my first poem about being in silence. And I think I wrote something like I like to be by the stream and focus in silence. And it was very like minuscule. And then I would write all these poetries about like butterflies and like flowers and little things like that. But I would sit by the stream and I would just focus on my breath. And then I ended up getting really sick. And I think people were very confused because I was still such a happy child. And I really was able to focus on those sensations in my body. And I didn't really realize it until I went back to Vipassana. And I just remembered lying in bed and feeling this energy all over my body and being able to remain calm in such pain. And when I finally got so sick that my knee blew up with fluid and I ended up in the hospital, they had to put a PICC line in my heart. And during that process, I flatlined, and I ended up, in this, like, I would say total out of body experience, where I was just in this like stream of white light and complete love and comfort. And I think I've just been searching for that light my whole life, like I feel like I found it in Vipassana. I feel like I've really been able to get that feeling back that I lost and that I never knew I had. And by just experiencing such kindness in its purest form, I feel that now I'm able to have that same kindness and care for myself and hopefully share it with others. What I want to do with my future, I just hope that what I do helps other people heal, and helps other people see like how beautiful they are and how unkind we can be to ourselves, but how by switching that and by changing this repertoire in our minds, and by learning about the way the mind works, we can begin to be kinder to ourselves and watch the whole world around us just shift, just completely take a shift. So I don't know what I'm doing, but I think that like going for a shot in the dark is the only way. You're never supposed to know what you're doing. I mean, what fun would it be if you knew what you were doing? So to know is to not know.
And it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay.
Yeah,
like, think about it like a boyfriend, if you know everything that they're doing and if you know everything that you're going to do, you get bored of them and you want to like break up or whatever.
Right.
But if your boyfriend's constantly learning and like reading books and like taking you on surprise dates and like doing cool things with you, then you're intrigued because you don't know what's going to happen next. Well, life is the same way. And like, I'm dating life right now, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I love it. Like,
gosh, there's going to be so many wonderful quotes from this podcast. I love it. Life is like a date, a good date, hopefully. Wow. It's amazing to me that a young person such as yourself have had such a rich, you're in your 20s, right? And you've had such a rich life already, and what you were able to do, which I think I failed a lot of times, is getting some of those life lessons out of your experiences. And maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the people around you. What happened for me was that, I was still kind of steady on that course. Like, these are the things that are like successful. These are the things how I cope with life. I had some introspections. I had moments. I mean, I was reading a lot. I was, Joseph Campbell really was one of the influencers for me, The Power of Myth and all of that. And I had those pockets of introspection that happened here and there. But I think the failure that I'd say is that it didn't take root in a sense of turning it into some kind of a daily thing that I would, as a ritual or as a scheduled thing for me to follow, to kind of work on. It kind of was like, oh, I've learned something. It was cool. All right, I get it. I like some of the things in it, and then steady as she goes back to your kind of daily life, and so I wish to more and more people to have that ability to integrate that and have that in their life as a thing moving forward, whether it's meditation, whether it is those moments of self in that introspection that are beautiful moments where you should cherish that, and you should kind of not just let them go, notice and let them go, but notice and put them somewhere so you can go back to that place and draw strength from it. And so I think that's the stage in life that I am at right now, where I have those constantly, and now I'm kind of incorporating them and integrating them and drawing strength from that. And I feel kind of like what you described, that, the unknown is great because it will keep you, engaged and just living your life, right? And it's okay that you don't know. When we are fearful, right? When we are just like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen next? We're not ourselves anymore because we're hijacked by this fear. And I think it's important to still have those places to go to, that those nuggets that we found in ourselves, to say like, oh no, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine. And get power out of that.
Definitely. And I think that, like, even if you do find those, those times and you want to dip back into like these periods of strength that you've had, but then you find that you've lost your way for months or weeks or whatever it may be. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I used to be that way, but I can't be anymore because I haven't been for months. But you really can. And the point is to, recognize your weaknesses, but don't see them as flaws. See them as learning experiences. And even if it's only been a couple weeks since you've been putting off your dreams, or a couple months, or even years, just to go back and be like, it's never too late, because it's never too late, and in my opinion, it really isn't, because I think we live many lives. but
well, I wish you best in what you're doing right now, in your growth. The book that you wrote, I hope that it's going to take you on an interesting journey. You'll continue. You already have an interesting journey, but continuing on a journey. And thank you for sharing everything about your meditation in your life. And I've learned so many things, and I hope people get some of those things from you as well. Meditation is such a huge thing, and such a beneficial thing that we should really teach that in school. That should be like a subject that all kids should learn, and early on too, because it's such a huge tool that allows people to really, really, and whether it's in good moments or bad moments, it's such a great tool to kind of help yourself and recenter yourself. So I'm not sure why kids are not being taught that in school. Maybe this is for parents to take in right now and get that for yourself, get that for your kids, and use it as a tool to help out.
It is the manual.
Maybe that's what it is. Yes. Go in, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that was another great moment. Meditation is your manual.
It is. It's definitely your manual. Thank you for interviewing me today too. You're really inspiring, the way you're getting all these podcasts out and living your dream later on in life. And then I like how the last time we talked, you were like, so what is it that you want to do? And you really put that thought into my mind. And I think it helped me a lot, hone in to some things these past couple weeks. So I'm really grateful for that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's what I kind of hope right now with this. It's about listening, learning, and sharing. That's kind of like my little motto for this as well. It's like getting different perspectives from different people, not getting outside of your own little mental structures, because we have these things that we're taught that teachers are older. Teachers are these wise men with gray beards like myself. And it's, yes, maybe for some, but then there is also everything else. and everybody else. And everybody has a journey. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a life lesson that you can draw from and learn from and incorporate in your life. And so everybody, I believe, is a teacher. Everybody has a story to tell. And that's kind of my journey right now, to kind of discover those people and talk to them, learn from them, and share their stories. And hopefully someone is going to, someone is going to get influenced by this in a good way. They'll get this message, what you said, what I said, what we said over here, at the right time, in the right place, at the right space-time continuum where they just need it. And hopefully if that changes their life for the better, that's I mean, what more can you ask? That's just beautiful. Even if it's just one person, that's that's beautiful. That's all you can hope for, and it's awesome. So I really enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the future, because I think we're gonna chat about some other things. I have a feeling that we're gonna have another podcast or two talking about some other topics. So I'm looking forward to that, and we're gonna leave this in this mysterious tone. Other than your website, so here's your website, wildestmoon.com, where people can find out more about you, Sarah, and kind of track your journey. Is there anything else that you want to kind of leave us with? Any shout outs or anything? Maybe a message for those who are just starting with meditation? Maybe like a key point, like how would you help them to kind of get into it? Leave us something with at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're getting into meditation, the biggest thing is don't get upset with yourself. Like, where you are is where you are. So accept where you are and keep going. If you can only meditate 10 minutes a day, then accept that and be okay with it, because that's better than nothing. And I think the biggest point is just to keep following your journey, because what you experience is what you experience, and don't let anyone mess with what you're experiencing. Just experience it to the fullest and accept yourself where you are.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And I want to just share this one last thought with our viewers. If you find anything that's interesting to you out of this podcast, share it with others. You never know whose life you're going to change by sharing this and introducing this to others. Every one of our podcasts and my journey going through it has been such a blessing in which I get to learn from people and then share that with others. And that's all we can do. And I'll leave you with that. Until next time, I'm Adrian Sinclair, and this is a podcast with interesting people. The world is full of interesting people with wisdom and extraordinary experiences to learn from. Join me on a journey to discover them, speak with them, and learn from them. I'm Adrian Sinclair, host of A Podcast with Interesting People at apodcast.com.